Hello! I'm doing a thing at the minute where I'm reading the newest weird fiction I could get my hands on, and then I'm going to read the oldest weird fiction, which is going to include Gilgamesh and Hellscreen, but I'll talk more about that next week. This week I've read a really good selection. I've really enjoyed a lot of what I found. One of them is an anthology which is from Undertow Publications, and they do best new weird fiction every year. So just have a look at their website if you want to get any of the other years. But I've just read Year's Best Weird Fiction Volume 4. They have a guest editor in for each one, so that it kind of, I guess, doesn't get too stale and they don't sort of stick on one sort of variety of weird fiction. And this time it was Helen Marshall, and the weird fiction that she's chosen is less horror based than I think it was before, and introduced me to a new idea of weird fiction, because it kind of explores a much more subtle kind of weird fiction. For example, one of my favourite ones was Outtakes by Irenison Okoji, and that was just about a woman who was with a boyfriend of hers that was unfaithful, and it was just an undercurrent of weird, and you know, it was very subtle, and a lot of them are quite subtle, and there's a lot of representation from, you know, around different cultures and so on with this particular collection. They were all very good, but I found the anthology somewhat hit and miss as to whether I personally really enjoyed them. But I think perhaps it's just because reading is such a personal thing, and if you're not grabbed by a particular author's voice straight off, you can sometimes zone out a bit and not take it in. So I think that's what happened. They were really good, but I personally didn't enjoy all of them. But her introduction is quite thought-provoking, Helen Marshall's, and I'll just read what she wrote here. It is a genre used to dismantling the status quo and exploring what lies beyond the margins of what is known in the world. It is a genre obsessed with bringing to light what wishes to remain hidden and dealing with the consequences of that revelation. The rules of reality have changed. This is an age in which it seems impossible to count on shared assumptions. Gary Dunyan on Twitter cleverly captured the zeitgeist by pulling together a number of headlines he had read recently. Suspect in North Korea killing thought she was taking part in TV prank. Next, Robert Mugabe could contest election as corpse. Wife says German parents told to destroy doll that can spy on children. His caption: Season 4 of Black Mirror is coming along nicely. And by the way, if you haven't seen Season 4 of Black Mirror, oh my god, watch it, it's brilliant. So yeah, that's kind of commenting on the fact that we live in an age in which it's really hard to tell fact from fiction. People are going very much on confirmation biases, and also digitally we're so advanced that it's so easy to fake stuff. So yes, it's a really interesting new dimension to weird fiction, I feel, and it's very telling of where we're going in the modern age. Okay, and also I read another anthology, More Bizarro Than Bizarro. I absolutely loved this. I'm going to see if I can show you the front page again. I showed you it in the previous video, but I think there were only about 2 or 3 stories that I wasn't that keen on. You know, they're all very sharp and funny, and I found Christoph Paul's story particularly inspiring to do with writing. And he actually, Christoph Paul, has a YouTube channel where he talks about writing, The Passion of the Christoph. So yeah, you should have a look at that if you're a writer as well. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'll have to show you the cover in a minute because it seems to be taking its time. But also I read, oh hang on, here it is. Look. Ooh. So yeah, that's very cool. And also I read Who Cares Nothing Matters by Julia Platz-Halter. And this was another really good one and a complete surprise because I literally just know Julia Platz-Halter from Twitter. I have no idea who she is. I just know that her tweets really make me laugh. And she's not always tweeting about her book and stuff, but she's genuinely entertaining online. And so when I realised that she was a writer, I said, can I have a link to your book? And I read it, and immediately I just thought it was hilarious. And you know, I had kind of you know, I enjoyed the characters. I felt like it wasn't just funny, there was emotional connection there, and the story was really unusual and obviously involved a lot of imagination. People wake up in America and they're, or actually the world over, sorry, and the things that they've done become weird growths on their body. So once people figure out the code of these strange growths that appear every morning, people will know what you've been up to. So there's a kind of real, again, a real fear of being found out, which ties into the online issues as well, because I mean, people are scared of being found out because of the internet and so on. So yeah, Who Cares Nothing Matters, Julia Platz-Halter. I thoroughly recommend it. And also some others. I've got some physical books, which is exciting. I got a couple of these in BizarroCon. If you haven't seen the video of BizarroCon, you should have a look. The first one starts off as Lovecraftian microfiction, and then The Challenge from Beyond. And they're all by different people. The first one is different flash fiction, and this one is the same story but given to lots of different people. And if I'm correct, it was a game that Lovecraft used to play with his literary friends, The Challenge from Beyond. So that's fun. And I haven't actually read that half of it yet, but the Lovecraftian microfiction, God, some of these are really good. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, another good one. And Star Creek was fun. Star Creek, Nathan Carson, who incidentally is one of the authors in this. This is kind of like, if you can imagine a Lovecraftian Stranger Things, but with older kids who take acid and other drugs. The cover is by Matthew Reaver, who is an Australian graphic designer, and he does a lot of book covers, and I think it's fantastic. And yeah, it's good fun, like it's a good romp. I enjoyed it. It may not have blown my socks off, but I did find it very entertaining. So yeah, thoroughly recommend that one as well. And also the final book I've been reading is Welcome to Night Vale. Well, it devours a Welcome to Night Vale novel, and it's, I don't know if you know anything about Welcome to Night Vale, but it started off as a podcast and it's just become like a huge cultural phenomenon. I went to go and see them perform live in London, and it was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. It's kind of, how do you explain? It's all set around a desert town, if you don't know, and it's just a place where every urban myth is a reality, and everything strange is just kind of taken for granted. And it's got a really amazing kind of topsy-turvy way of looking at things, where the normal would be considered strange. And what really makes it so wonderful, I think, is the language and the way that it's written. It's really beautifully written and wonderfully narrated by Cecil Baldwin, who's supposed to be a character of like a local DJ at the local radio station. And that's the thing about it, I think, why it kind of conjures this familiarity and instant love, is that it may have been a podcast, which is the very essence of the future, but it really has its roots in old radio, like perhaps War of the Worlds or something like that. And the book itself is so pretty, and I just want to read a little bit to you so that you can get a kind of idea of what I mean. I believe it is on page 34. Essentially, in the story so far, because this is as far as I've got, a scientist lady is trying to find out more about a house that's there if you look at it, but it doesn't seem to exist. And she's in a coffee shop, and she's from out of town, so she's not local to Night Vale, so she's kind of treated with vague suspicion by those outside. And she's talking to her boss, who is Carlos the scientist, and asking him if he also has people point and shout interloper at him. Carlos said he didn't get the interloper stuff much since he'd started dating Cecil, and once they'd gotten married it had stopped completely. Guess I'm finally one of them, he said, in an off-handed way that manifested it in Nilanjana's chest as a pang of jealousy. He had gone on to explain that the interloper thing was their form of a friendly greeting. He had once sneezed in an ice cream shop, only to be surrounded by a dozen shouts of interloper, followed by the small crowd picking him up and carrying him through the streets. He had been terrified, but then they got tired and set him down several blocks away. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's very strange, and it's new and yet old as well. And I got this from Portland. So yes, that's my new fiction wrap up, I believe. And I'll be back next week with some really old weird fiction. Bye.